All right, welcome everyone.
Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Looks like our participants are joining. As you join, feel free to place where you're from, where you're joining us from, what your role is in the chat. We are excited to find out a little more about you as well before we get started.
Hope you had a good Monday, and we'll end this with a really high note, sharing lots of great literacy solutions for you.
Absolutely.
So we'll give it another 30 seconds or so, just making sure everybody can get on. Thank you all for joining us. We're excited we're just going to scratch the surface today. So you're going to hear a lot of information. And again, we'd love to follow up with you afterwards. So please don't feel like you have to get every bit of information today.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think if anything, they'll probably walk away like, wow, that was a lot of information in a short amount of time.
All right. So why don't we get started, Megan?
Sounds great.
All right. So I'm Karen Venditti, and I have been working with Amplify products for about 6.5 years now. And I've had a wonderful experience getting into schools and working with teachers like Megan, who are actually using the high quality instructional materials and having a super impact on their students.
Yeah, and as Karen mentioned, she's actually worked with me. My name's Megan. I am a former classroom teacher from South Louisiana. And just like Karen, I've worked, on our professional development team, which is actually where we met. And now we get to join you guys as literacy curriculum specialists for Amplify. And this is really exciting for us because we get to share our passion for not only Amplify's literacy products, but just doing what's best for kids and the latest research on that as well. So thank you so much for joining. Today, we're gonna go through Amplify's comprehensive literacy suite. We're gonna break apart, the assessment, core instruction for across grades K through 8, as well as our digital adaptive supplemental program for K-5, and then our digital supplemental program for 6th through 8th grade. And then as we're going through today, feel comfortable placing your questions in the chat. At the end of this, we will open up the floor for that. But if you feel like you need to ask something right away, we do have Stephen on the line, and Karen and I will both be here to answer those as we move through today's presentation. So yeah, no problem. Today, we're actually going to start out with looking at the big picture when thinking about, where your district or school is at and what's really needed to move the needle forward for all students. Or maybe, you have stagnant scores and or declining scores, and you're really looking to turn that trajectory around. And so when we think about what it takes, it's really about a strong literacy program. It's not just about a reading program or an assessment tool. A strong literacy program is going to bring together curriculum, instruction, practice, differentiation, and assessments that really measure where students are from the get-go, where they need to go, and what's needed to promote their ongoing reading success. Amplify has brought these key components together in an early literacy suite to ensure that teachers across the country have all of what they need, all of the materials that meets all of these necessary elements, all based on the latest research on literacy across grades K to 8. So today, as I mentioned, we're briefly going to talk about each Amplify program that's grounded in research individually, but also we're going to show how they work together to provide a complete and connected literacy suite focused on instruction, practice, differentiation, and assessment.
All right, so let's start with assessment. That's where we're going to start with the data collection that really drives what you do in all the other pieces of your curriculum. And so the heart of M-Class is the latest version of DIBEL's 8th edition. And it's made possible through our partnership with the University of Oregon. It's really that rock solid, gold standard suite of tools that uses the most updated university research. And so what is M-Class? Well, it's a universal screener with identical progress monitoring tools. So teachers aren't going to have to learn different measures. And also tied to that universal screening and progress monitoring is an electronic grouping tool that is going to provide instructional options that you don't have to go and find or create. But then outside DIBELS, we've also got dyslexia screening measures. And so there are other measures as well as student-led measures that are part of the suite. If you do need additional tools for a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention, we have Amplify M-Class intervention. And so we'd love to share more about that, as well as if you are a district that uses running records, we do have an option for TRC, text reading and comprehension in both Spanish and English. Those are things I wasn't going to talk much about. Again, we'd love to talk to you more if you're interested in those tools. But the other thing through all of the measures and all of the tools are stakeholder reports. So all of your stakeholders, from administrators to parents to teachers, all leaders are going to have access all in one tool here. And so, you know, there's a lot of power to having kiddos, a child articulate or produce the sounds, or even struggle to produce those sounds. You know, we can see lips move, we can see a child's affect. Teachers really value the transparency because they actually administered the assessment. They get a holistic sense of that child. You know, it's authentic. They did it. Because the focus really should be on that productive language. So it's optimized by that teacher administering these quick 1-minute assessments. Kids are producing sounds, which is really all early literacy is all about. And that immediate access to hard data doesn't allow for a second of lost learning time. And so here are those 1-minute measures. You know, DIBELS 8th edition, the most up-to-date version across grades. And these are the ones you'd expect, you know, for all literacy acquisition. From letter naming to segmenting sounds to also, you know, comprehension. What lots of schools are really excited about, though, is when you see that goes to grades 3 through 6. And so you can continue that data story really seamlessly. And so floor and ceiling effects are also built in. Items go low enough to really catch those struggling kiddos. But items are going to go high enough for you to make sure that you're, you know, it's instructionally useful for all of your advanced readers as well. We have dyslexia screening, some additional screening measures. So rapid automatized naming is a teacher administered assessment, but then spelling and vocabulary are both online, and kiddos are going to do that on their own platform. Text reading online is our newest measure, as well as decoding online. And so that's voice enabled. Kids are going to sit in front of a computer and actually read into the computer. It's going to give you a wonderful error analysis of that reading, as well as a comprehension and fluency score. And then decoding online, if you want to go dig deep, a little bit deeper and look at those sound spelling patterns, that understanding of that, you're going to be able to give a decoding online for our kiddos. What does it look like? Would teachers have a device? Maybe a Chromebook, maybe an iPad. It's optimized for touchscreen, but you can use an actual a PC. Kids are going to have printed materials. So you see that the nonsense word fluency example. If you want, we've actually got printed materials in a booklet that teachers can have that are for both benchmark and progress monitoring. Let's look at it in action, okay? I'm going to show you a little video clip of Karen and Lee. And so Karen has her screen in front of her, but what you're also seeing here is that actual screen on her iPad. She's got a little guy here named Mr. Say. We call him Mr. Say. He's reading, he's providing the directions. She's going to read that for fidelity of implementation, very important. There's going to be a little clock that comes up here with 3 dots to remind you of those 3 for that 3-second rule. So let's watch Karen. She's using her finger, or you can use a stylus on that touch screen to record all of what Lee is sharing.
The sounds in the word am are Your turn. Tell me the sounds in the word am. Tell me any sounds you hear. Okay, here is your first word. 4. Here.
So if he makes errors or if he self-corrects, she's also going to mark that in the platform. So now we're going to see, I'm going to jump to another screen and we're going to see her finishing up that assessment. And in this case, you're going to see something change with this purple bar on the screen. I want you to notice that. And I also want you to notice the clock. When she's done, she's actually going to hit this button, done. And then we're going to see the screen that comes up when she sees what, so she can see what he has done.
First. First. Bring. Stop.
That little yellow screen reminds her that it's
job.
almost time. Now she's going to hit done. We're going to see that screen. And this is the screen she gets. She's going to see his immediate score. He scored well below benchmark, and we'll talk a little bit about that when you see the reporting screen. But she also notices on this screen, this is her assessment screen, she's already given the letter naming fluency assessment. She's now going to give nonsense words. So we know this screen is for progress monitoring and for benchmarking, and this is exactly where she's going to go for her next assessment. So what does it look like? She's got her data. She wants to see, this is my class. Now I get to see what my class did. I've got 15 kiddos. They've all been assessed. It immediately shows me in a color-coded way from red to blue what the level of risk that my students are at. And so we've got 3 students that are well below benchmark and 3 students that are above benchmark. And so I can look at all of the skills that they're being assessed and how kiddos did on all of those individual skills. What I really want to go then is see my individual students. And when I see my individual students, I can look at, again, all of those skills and all of those assessments and where they scored. I can actually sort these. There are buttons to sort that, so I can pull up all of my well below benchmark students so that I can really see who needs more of my assistance immediately. I can click on any one of these. And so if I click on one of them, I can get the probe analysis, the detailed probe analysis. And this shows me, again, this was a nonsense word fluency. You can see from the top, you can see where this student performed and where he needs to be in terms of the benchmark. What I love to see is immediately the errors. Right there, I see that medial vowel. The student missed that medial vowel. I can see exactly what this student read and make some little determinations on my own. But once I've got this data, I want to see, what am I going to do with it? Once I'm going to get all this data, I've got reports. So reports are going to come out. For administrators, this is our reporting and analysis suite for actually a system level administrator, where you're going to get an aggregate view, or a view of aggregate data in various forms. And you're going to get fidelity reports and score reports for people to make decisions. Parents are going to get data. They're going to get a report. This is going to come 3 times a year. Again, color coded. You can use this with a parent teacher conference. Lots of great parent friendly language to help parents help their kids. But then I want to see my teacher level. What can I do next? Well, I talked about that instruction. We're going to then go from that tab where we were looking at the benchmark data to now I'm going to look at the instruction. And here I've got things to look at: groups, students, or all activities. I'm looking at my students. I'm looking at that student to see what were her observed patterns in all of those assessments that I gave. But what I really want to do is be able to then group my students, because it's harder for me to work one-on-one, although it's possible. So I've got all these activities to be able to do that. But I want to group my students. And when I group my students, it pulls up and shows me that that young lady, Emma, is in the group for phonemic awareness. Tells me what she can do, tells me some of the ELL considerations, all of those things that are a result from the sub-skill analysis from the DIBELS administration. Then I'm going to get activities. I'm going to get very concrete, explicit activities that are laid out, that basically that warm up, the modeling, guided practice, I do, we do, you do. It's clear for students, and you're going to have a wide variety of activities based on all of those skills that students need practice for. But the real thing is, what am I going to do with my students when, with my other students, when I'm working on those skills? Something else I want you to notice here is CKLA Connect. That assessment then tells me what I need to do in my core curriculum, not just in other activities, but in my core curriculum. And so we want to hear about Amplify Reading, because Amplify Reading is going to then work on the skills, and also CKLA as our core instructional piece. So now, Megan, let's hear about CKLA, where that direction is taking us from M-Class.
Thanks so much, Karen. And so, as Karen mentioned, we're actually going to take a look at our core programs, because when using that data, that you get from M-Class, when we think about what it is that we're really seeing, and Karen, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. When we think about that data and districts analyzing that data and looking at their RTI triangle, trying to figure out what the issue is, oftentimes they'll turn to an intervention program, or they think they have an intervention problem. But in reality, what's really going on is there's a core instruction problem that's really preventing them from seeing the results on standardized assessments, on benchmark screeners that they really work so hard to see. And so I'm actually going to share our core programs with you, our core program for pre-K through 5th grade with Amplify CKLA. And towards the end of this, Karen's going to share our core program for middle school students. So we'll actually dive into how Amplify's core programs go through each phase. So in K-2, this is that phase where students are going through or learning how to read. So we'll see foundational skills along with knowledge building. And in 3rd through 5th grade, this is where they make that transition from, where skills instruction becomes more complex, and they move into that reading to learn phase. And then in 6th through 8th grade, the focus is going to be on analyzing complex text. And so that's where Karen will dive in. So I'm going to start out with Amplify CKLA, a comprehensive literacy program for pre-K through 5th grade that is built on the science of reading. So this is something that we take tremendous pride in. And so we'll actually start out with this simple view of reading. So many of you who are on the call may be familiar with the equation that represents Goff and Tumner's simple view of reading. And so basically what this research shows us is that it takes 2 main components to become a proficient reader. The first being word recognition or decoding of text, the ability to actually lift words off the page. And then the second, equally as important component to be developing into a proficient reader is language comprehension or oral language. So being able to actually make meaning of the text that you're reading. And so this research is really important, especially as the science of reading is sweeping across the nation. And we can further decompose what these 2 components or the competencies that make up these 2 main components. And so if you're looking at this is actually an adapted version of Hollis Scorbo's reading rope. And this is really helping us to understand how the brain begins the process of learning how to read, and then over time strengthens and moves to that reading to learn phase. So when Dr. Scarborough originally developed this, she wanted to show how a strong foundation in both word recognition or decoding and language comprehension begins separately and changes over time. That top strand is actually the language comprehension or oral language strand. And that's, like I said, what's needed to make meaning of text. Whereas that bottom strand is word recognition. When we think about word recognition, this includes the skills that aren't acquired naturally, but must be mastered to decode words effortlessly so that students can actually make meaning of them. These are skills that have to be explicitly taught to rewire the brain so that students can read the words on a page effortlessly. But you see that they start off separate and they're developed simultaneously in those K-2 years, those foundational learning to read years. But over time, these strands will strengthen and reinforce each other when they're developed in a manner that, like I said, places equal importance on both during core instruction in the early grades. And then as we follow along those strands, we see that they do become integrated. They're strong enough to integrate, support one another, and produce a proficient reader so that they can move to that learning to read phase. And CKLA's own program structure was actually designed or developed from that research. In K-2, we take a 2-strand approach. We explicitly teach all of the foundational skills needed to develop strong word recognition in the skill strand on the left. And then we build oral language or develop language comprehension in the knowledge strand through content-rich text to develop expansive vocabulary. And then we further integrate those in our 3rd through 5th grade integrated strand, just as that reading rope does, by continuing to develop more complex skills and focusing on or emphasizing rich content and vocabulary development. And so we'll start with the foundational skills where students are actually learning how to read. And so what research has shown us for decades is that teaching reading is not a natural process, but one that has to be explicitly taught, practiced, and mastered. And so, having instruction that is going to provide explicit systematic phonics and practice is really what enables skilled decoding and fluency. And that's exactly what CKLA does. So in CKLA, kids learn how to read starting with the sounds as they develop strong phonological and phonemic awareness skills. CKLA teachers explicitly teach all of the letter sound correspondences across K-2. So there are actually 44 different sounds in the English language and 150 different ways to represent those. We leave no stone left unturned there. Students then, on a daily basis, practice mapping the sounds to letters as they apply those newly learned sound spellings through deliberate practice opportunities that focus on developing fluency, such as reading connected text and writing about the text they're reading. So it's through those practice opportunities that students become aware of the connection between reading and writing. And this really helps them build confidence as they go. So we'll actually look at what the progression of skills instruction looks like on a daily basis, kind of a quick overview. So because research shows that foundational reading instruction that starts with the sounds first benefits the greatest number of students, CKLA does use a sounds first approach. Teachers use their instructional roadmap as they introduce the sound, which sounds something like, boys and girls, today we're going to learn a new sound, the sound. Can you say the sound? Students are then asked to listen to and repeat words containing the sound. And so this isn't your typical letter of the day instruction or letter of the week instruction. In that lesson, instruction is then going to progress to the phoneme level through interactive activities such as sound riddles, where students are going to listen to riddles and identify the correct word that contains the sound to solve the riddle. But skills instruction should be fun. And so we have interactive songs that can be found on the digital CKLA teacher planner or the student hub, where students get to listen to fun, catchy lyrics and watch these characters in the videos use their best CKLA TikTok dance moves. And this is really just to get your kids excited about learning new sounds, reinforce them, and sing and dance along. We know K2 students need lots of movement. But now that we've introduced the sound, it's time to crack the code and connect the new sound to its letter sound correspondence. So CKLA's instructional roadmap actually provides teachers with the directions needed to explicitly teach the formation of each letter in the new sound spelling. So this is a comprehensive program. All of it's going to be integrated. So first, the teacher is going to model, and then next, students will use a multi-sensory activity to practice spelling the sound. So maybe it's, skywriting or writing on the desk or, writing that sound out. And then they're going to practice reading and writing the sound in words as they develop like fine motor skills and handwriting fluency in their student activity books. So teachers are actually receiving feedback as students complete these different activities independently or with teacher support. And so looking at the back of that page, that's that opportunity for that teacher to pull that small group who needs that extra support during tier 1 instruction and really make sure that instruction is intensified. But like I said, we want to make this fun. So there are interactive sound videos that are providing additional visual and auditory practice opportunities for students as they're learning how to crack the code. So students really get to have fun with these videos, fine-tuning their articulation as they join in with other children. And this is just part of the many high-quality materials that are included in CKLA's kits. So when we think about what it actually takes to build a fluent reader, mapping sounds to letters is a crucial component to really becoming that skilled decoder. Tactile engaging activities like chaining are one of the many deliberate practice opportunities in CKLA where students are building and reading words as they connect sounds to letter codes. And this helps organically build their skills. So manipulating, adding, subtracting, deleting individual phonemes, this is all developing word awareness. And this is a key quality of our key characteristic of high quality phonics instruction. But now it's time to really pull all of these skills that students have been taught and build fluency. And CKLA student readers provide them that opportunity to do that. Our student readers are on-level connected text that follows CKLA's phonics scope and sequence. So students, the main thing here to remember is that this is pulling everything together, but more importantly, CKLA students are never asked to use unreliable reading strategies or apply the skills they haven't been explicitly taught, which makes all learners feel successful as they begin to see reading as rewarding. And so our 2nd through 3rd grade student readers are so engaging. They're in chapter book format. CKLA students get to follow diverse characters through various adventures. So for example, in this informational text titled Green Fern Zoo, this is a 1st grade on-level student reader. Students get to meet Vern in the 1st chapter. And Vern will actually take students on an adventure through the Green Fern Zoo as they discover new facts about panthers, chimps, reef sharks, and many more incredible animals. So you might be wondering, like, on-level text, what kind of supports are built in? Well, you'll notice here that the words containing the new sound are actually bolded to support students as they build fluency. Also, you'll see some words that have underlined underneath them, like the word 2. This is actually supports for newly learned irregular high frequency words called tricky words in CKLA. And that's going to be embedded within each chapter. And as students progress through each unit within that K2 skill strand, those supports are actually going to be removed. But when we think about those students who maybe don't master those skills the first time, they're going to need additional support and remediation. CKLA's high quality instructional materials provides teachers with the those activities right at point of use that are aligned to every lesson in the additional support section at the end of the lesson. So these fun teacher-led instructional activities can be used to remediate skills deficit right as students demonstrate the need for that additional support. And like I said, they're found right in your teacher's guide, right at point of use, along with all those game boards. So this saves you tremendous time, and rest assured, you're using remediation activities that are actually aligning to your core instruction. But as students progress through that K-2 phase, learning to read, and then move into that reading to learn phase, the skill instruction in 3rd to 5th grade is going to become a little more sophisticated, as it should. So for example, instead of focusing on the smallest unit of sounds, it's actually, instruction is going to shift to focusing on the smallest meaning of word parts to develop advanced foundational skills, including morphology, Latin roots, and suffixes. So CKLA students are still going to receive explicit instruction delivered by the teacher as they're mastering these skills in context, but everything is going to connect back to the text they're reading. So, but as I mentioned in the first few minutes of this, foundational skills is only one part of the equation. So now we're actually going to explore the language comprehension portion of the simple view that enables students to build knowledge and expand their vocabulary and really put them on the path to proficiency. And so we'll start with how CKLA builds knowledge across K-5. So here, what you're looking at is CKLA's knowledge sequence for pre-K through 5th grade. It's during this time that, when you look at this knowledge sequence, this knowledge sequence is actually intentionally designed to build knowledge and vocabulary, not just within a grade level, but really, across grade levels as well. And so students are actually learning and building upon important background knowledge and vocabulary from year to year, and really deepening their understanding of these topics. So as you browse through these topics, you can see science, history, and literary topics are interconnected to form that strong progression of topics and concepts within, both within and across grade levels. So Karen, side note, Karen's actually going to expand on how our middle school program, Amplify ELA, will actually continue this progression. But for right now, we're actually just going to take a look at CKLA's instruction that really equips teachers to expose students to these worldly, rich topics using a research-based approach. And so maybe you're looking at your grade level and you're thinking, I've never taught about early American civilizations in 1st grade. How do you do that? Well, CKLA's intentional design capitalizes on the research that demonstrates the relationship between listening comprehension and reading comprehension. So we can see it listening comprehension far outpaces reading comprehension in those early grades. And so as students' foundational skills are evolving in the early grades, and they're actually going to be applying those skills, in those student readers in this skill strand, but they're also going to be exposed to content-rich read-alouds in the knowledge strand to build oral language competencies. And so a daily oral read aloud is what you'll see in that knowledge strand. But as reading comprehension skills begin to catch up to listening comprehension in the upper grades, the emphasis changes in CKLA. So we're moving from that read aloud that students are actively engaging in, every day, and now they're going to become active readers. So in their dynamic student readers. So their decoding skills from K2 is actually what enables them to unpack the complex text in 3.5 and collaboratively learn about the wonderful new content that's going to continue to build from earlier grades. And so just like in K2, our 3rd through 5th grade student readers are on level text that students get to actively read about those worldly topics that they'll explore in CKLA. They get to engage in rich academic and domain-specific vocabulary, and then apply that new content to all of the writing types expected in the standards. So it's really amazing to see the motivation and enthusiasm of CKLA students as they become entomologists, geologists, astronomers, poets, and Shakespearean thespians. And so hearing from 3rd through 5th grade CKLA teachers, they're like, my students have never been so engaged, and that's why. But what does this knowledge building look like for a teacher in the classroom? So in what you see here is we're actually going to kick off those knowledge domains with a connected trade book. So this is an example of insect bodies, and this goes along with the ubiquitous worlds of insects domain in 2nd grade. So teachers actually kick off the unit or the domain with this trade book, and then they use the trade book activities that align to the domain, along with exposing students or showing students an amusing and engaging animated knowledge builder video that emphasizes deeper inquiry with the new topic. So what's happening in this clip is that we're actually witnessing a solitary insect, the grasshopper, who's taking a vacation to the habitat of a social one, the honeybee. And so this is just to really spark students' curiosity, expose them to some of the things that they're going to hear or vocabulary they'll hear throughout the domain. But lessons begin by strategically activating background knowledge from prior domains or prior lessons, and students are then guided with a purpose for listening as they absorb this new content. So we're going to review what we know, activate prior knowledge, and then we're actually going to move into that read aloud. So CKLA provides detailed and dynamic images for students to view and listen along as the teacher is reading a complex content-rich text that's above grade level and modeling proficient reading. So students become active participants as they dissect images and then engage with the read aloud discussions embedded throughout that, the teacher's guide. And so students aren't just sitting and getting, they are actively participating, developing listening skills, developing speaking skills, and really comprehending this new knowledge. But after the read aloud, it's time for students to really synthesize their new knowledge and continue to apply what they've learned. So there are going to be comprehension questions and unlimited avenues for sharing, where teachers really get to add their art, their engagement strategies that they love, you know, along with supports in the sidebars to make sure that we're reaching all learners. One of the methods for applying new content in CKLA includes an emphasis on vocabulary use. So daily in CKLA, students' oral language development is actually fostered by embedded word work lessons across grades K to 5, where rich 2-tier academic and domain-specific vocabulary takes center stage, and activities focus on real-world application for students while connecting that vocabulary to their own lives. So you'll see that on a daily basis across K to 5, and then what do we do next? Well, this is just an example of K2. We're actually going to move to that application piece and put it all together. This is an example of the insects domain. So students actually in this lesson or in this domain start with an insect journal. And then they're going to apply that newly learned vocabulary by labeling the body parts of an ant. But CKLA's writing instruction is going to integrate the content that students are reading about to give them that opportunity to compose not just informal writing opportunities, but also formal writing opportunities. And that's exactly what college and career ready standards call for. As we move into the upper grades, CKLA students continue to write to reinforce their new knowledge and vocabulary, just like in K to 2. But we're actually going to just kind of explore the formal writing progression in 3-5 here using this unit from 4th grade, Empires in the Middle Ages. And so in this unit, students are actually going to be composing a persuasive writing. So the teacher is going to explicitly teach the components of the genres first. So in this case, it's a persuasive writing or persuasive essay. And students are then going to plan as they organize their thoughts and use the knowledge and vocabulary they've acquired through the reading to provide details. And they're going to identify, you know, key facts and information about the role of different people or that they actually are introduced to during this unit from the Middle Ages. They're going to have to select which middle-aged person they would choose to be. And so they're going to have to provide text-based evidence to support their claim. And so, or their choice. And then they're going to draft and edit their work before publishing and presenting it to peers. So we want them to fully experience how the writing process connects to reading and all areas of the curriculum. And so CKLA provides them multiple opportunities to, within that 3rd through 5th grade strand to do exactly that, as everything's connecting back to the text, not just writing, but, morphology, grammar, everything is embedded there. So it's through all of these experiences, content-rich lessons, extensive vocabulary development, sharing learned knowledge through a multitude of writing opportunities for students to express who they are, what they know, and how they think, with an abundance of amazing text to read. So CKLA helps build that critical background knowledge that makes the difference on their academic journeys. But as we touched on in the beginning, if we're going to be using a practice program or a digital supplemental piece, we want to make sure it's not only grounded in research, but it's aligning to what we're doing during core instruction, because that's part of what defines a strong literacy program. So that's where we're going to look on Amplify Reading. And Amplify Reading is actually a personalized student-driven program that's actually really fitting well and built for this moment, that is this moment of uncertainty in education, and it serves all students across K8. And so it is based on the latest research in literacy, on game-based learning, motivational theories, and social and emotional learning. And it's going to provide them with that personalized instruction that they need to really catch up, and then also reinforce what you're teaching during core instruction. So when we think about what it takes for students to log in, to actually want to play a digital, practice program, it has to be motivating. They have to want to actually log in. And so Amplify Reading, for our K-8 experience, our narratives that drive this storyline actually unfold like a chapter book, and they're age appropriate. And so when we think about age appropriate, that's key to getting students to want to be motivated to actually play. And so I'll tell you a little bit about each world before we kind of dive into or take a closer look at Amplify Reading. But if you're a K1 teacher, think about what your students love. They love imagination. So students in K1 actually enter the world of imagination, or the world of Bookerton, which is actually known as the community of readers. And here they set out on fun quests with friendly Bookerton inhabitants, all while expanding their reading skills and growing that little orange guy there, that they're curioso. In 2nd and 3rd grade, though, when we think about what becomes more appropriate, well, these students love order and facts. They appreciate surprise. They revel in silliness. So the game story actually continues for them, but now a stranger comes to Bookerton, and she actually uncovers a forgotten secret from the past. And so it actually pulls students into this world of mystery. These secrets are actually unlocked as students build their skills and knowledge throughout each quest. But in 4th and 5th grade, the landscape changes a lot. In fact, now that kids are maturing, they like to be experts, and they really appreciate rules and logic. So they get to unlock this abandoned workshop underneath the town of Bookerton, where they discover that their world is just one of many. They join a group called the Four Eyes and actually embark on adventures to master the close reading skills required to find the Codex Magnifica. If you're wondering what that is, that's actually an ancient book with the power to answer any questions put to it. So I wish I had that. I would definitely ask the COVID question, like, what's the solution? But in the 6th through 8th grade world, this is a whole different dynamic. So students actually delve into a dystopian future world where machines rule, depriving humans of the right to read and actually think for themselves. So students get to join a rebellion called the Last Readers and set out on thrilling missions where they learn to question everything they read and ultimately save humanity from machines. And so these are all of our developmentally appropriate worlds, but that's just one of the key driving factors in making sure that in developing Amplify Reading, we wanted to make sure that our stories or our narratives were developmentally appropriate, so students would be motivated to play. But we also wanted to give students the skills practice they need that's based on the latest research and proven to work, alongside giving older students that skills practice they need, but alongside that grade level material with built-in scaffolds. And so for our K-5 experience, it is our scope and sequence is actually, if you're a CKLA user, it actually follows the same scope and sequence as CKLA. But if you're not, knowing that the instruction is actually developed from the science of reading, it's going to provide high quality, explicit, systematic instruction That's really reassuring to making sure that you're selecting a program that is best for kids. It provides that effortless differentiation for teachers for all students, not just below level students, but on grade level, above grade level, while maybe you're working with those below late grade level students from your in-class groups. And it's going to give teachers meaningful growth data, but it's flexible and teachers can use it however they see fit in their classroom. It really fits into any instructional model. So students are actually placed into Amplify Reading across 13 different skill domains. And this is really important because most other programs, you'll see 5 to 6, 5 to 7 different skill domains, but Amplify Reading is going to provide really granular placement for them, really appropriate placement. And that's actually determined either by their benchmark assessments or their performance data on MClass 888, or from any of these screeners you see here. But for districts who maybe aren't using those screeners, there's actually an internal placement tool that's built right into Amplify Reading's narrative. As students log on, they actually enter this first portion of the quest where students participate in this placement assessment that places them right where they need to start out. So going back to age appropriate and adaptive, all students are entering their age appropriate narrative, no matter where they are in their reading journey. They're all going to encounter the same quest or obstacles. And when we think about quests, it's like episodes in a TV series. And then at the sub-skill level, or the games that they're playing are going to adapt at that sub-skill level. And so as we think about this is really important to making sure all students are feeling successful because it is age appropriate. They're all encountering those same quests, but they're getting content or practice that is personalized to them. We want to extend those conversations. And to further expose students to the key social emotional learning topics. So teachers are provided with a social and emotional learning quest extension guide to further continue those conversations about the quest that students are encountering, to develop things like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So I'll give you a quick look at this.
Welcome to Amplify Reading, a brand new
This is the world of
for you
Bookerton.
to explore,
And
but you won't be
we'll
exploring
see
alone.
here that
Meet
here's
your
this little
very own
Curioso. This is the
Curioso is
personalized
a
learning
curious by
companion
nature.
that students
They
actually
love
get to choose
exploring
at the beginning
learning
of
curious.
the program. And
There
as
are
they move
plenty
through
of
each
different
quest,
places
they
to
actually
explore
are
and
rewarded
games
for
to play.
persistence
So
and
you
growth.
Curioso
And so they're
can read
unlocking
and learn
powers
all
and
over
that
town.
companion that
Head
Curioso
to the
is actually
food truck
growing alongside
and slice,
students.
dice, and
So
search
why is
words
it
to
time for now?
unravel
Well,
words.
students are missing foundational skills from last year's learning loss.
Unscramble sentences at the beach to reveal hidden messages
And
in
so
the bottle.
students are given that personalized skills instruction.
Put on
And
your cape and
alongside
unmask
that
the
other
secret identity.
important
Collect
component
clues
of
to solve a
reading,
bigger
that being
mystery.
language comprehension. And so
Along
they'll
the way,
develop
you'll earn
skills.
rewards for your effort.
We actually focus
The
on
more you
micro
learn, the
comprehension
more your
processes
curiosity grows.
to
Getting
further
stronger,
develop those
discovering
language
new
comprehension skills. And students are also going to have
Are
to
you
pull
ready to
all
get
of this
started?
all of their
Let's get
practice
going.
together and apply it in an e-reader text. So as they're playing though, what's happening is Amplify Reading is really providing that true personalized experience. And we're really the only program that does that. So it's going to provide adaptive scaffolding, instruction, and support. And the content that students are receiving in the next quest is based on the data from other activities in those quests. So it might provide them additional practice in areas of weakness, alongside more challenging practice in areas where students are ready to push on. And it's because of this level of personalization that there are over 1 million ways that students can move through the learning map. So students don't really get bored in Amplify Reading. In fact, they love it. But when we think about administrators, we want to give you guys feedback. And so administrators actually have access to their own reporting, and teachers do as well. And so teachers get to see what skills students are working on, whether they're on, above, or below grade level. If students are getting stuck, it's actually going to alert the teacher and say, hey, this child's stuck on this sub-skill game. And here's some actually teacher-led instructional activities that you can work on one-on-one to really close that gap and really help students make forward progress should they need that. But we want to keep caregivers in the loop. We want to keep them informed because they have a larger part in this new learning environment, and we want them to stay informed. And so caregivers are actually provided with reports as well. And so those are all given to teachers. Teachers can access these effortlessly. And it's also going to provide those social and emotional learning discussion opportunities to expose the stories and topics that students are engaging with in Amplify Reading to parents. Now, with 6 through 8, the last readers, it's a little different. This isn't adaptive. In fact, we've actually carefully crafted a sequence of instruction that's tightly connected to this narrative that raises the stakes for close reading. So that focus shifts from learning to read, reading to learn, to now analyzing complex texts and closely reading them. So it's no longer just a tool that you need to do well on tests. In Amplify Reading, close reading becomes a forgotten skill that empowers students to save the world. And so it's designed around the Common Core Anchor reading standards. It reinforces the concepts taught in any standards-aligned core curriculum and offers students a ton of independent practice. So it comes with 2 tracks, a basic track and an extra support track that's designed for struggling readers and language learners. So the program is going to assess students' performance throughout and provide easy to use reports so teachers can see how well their students are progressing and how well they're mastering the content. So I've done a lot just now. I've gone through our pre-K through 5th grade core instruction program. I've introduced that supplemental program called Amplify Reading for grades K through 5, and I just left off with 6 through 8. And so now, we're going to dive into that core instruction piece with Karen for middle schoolers. And this is a really cool program, so I'm excited for her to share.
Thank you, Megan. That was phenomenal. Just want to make sure you can see my screen.
Yes.
Wonderful. And so we've heard all about ELA in CKLA and Amplify Reading with our supplemental close reading tools. Now we're going to look at Amplify ELA, which was specifically built for the middle school, that special, unique middle school student in mind. Keep that in mind. And so we're starting with knowledge. One of those needs that middle school students have is to continue to build that knowledge. And Megan shared how CKLA's focus is heavily on knowledge. We're going to continue that on, and you're going to see literature, history, science, all of those connections that have come from the earlier grades. But let's face it, we know that middle school kiddos are different. They are changing. Their minds, their brains have accelerated growth at this point. One of the key things, though, is they want to find their voice. We know there's a lot of drama in middle school, and we want to help them find their voice. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that through wonderful, rich literature. And so what you're seeing with an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's really a prime focus of the literature, both literary and informational text that kids are going to see across grade levels. Within that platform, we're also going to do lots of really neat, engaging things with multimedia for kids. They're going to read poetry with Poetry in America with Shaquille O'Neal and other NBA stars. They're going to hear from a Holocaust survivor, Irene Butter. They're also going to read some of Irene's text within the Holocaust unit. They're going to then also see wonderful authors like Zhili Zhang and Caitlin Greenidge and Guadalupe Garcia McCall, and they're going to bond with those authors through interviews as well as these authors reading their text. But one of the really neat things they're going to see, and they're going to get a deeper understanding of Frederick Douglass through a riveting reading from the late
of the
Chadwick
life of
Boseman.
Frederick Douglass, an American slave, Chapter 1. I was born in Tuckahoe, near Hill.
And they're also going to see wonderful, rich content through 6 units of instruction in each grade level. We're going to start with a narrative to kick off the year with each grade, and we're going to have research collections as well as creative writing, all of your grammar, and you're seeing this with both literary and informational text. The teacher has a teacher guide. And everything that comes with that, but it's all available as a fully digital component as well. Teachers are going to project, teachers are going to have everything they need within that platform. So for a variety of implementations, whether you're asynchronous or synchronous, on-site or remote, everything is available to you. Students are going to have a consumable student edition, as well as 6 writing journals, one to go with each of those units. They're going to have those physical novels as well. There'll be a novel with each grade level, but the neat thing is all of those novels are available on our 700 book digital library. So anything they need, they're going to have access to that. Now, there's a couple things we know about middle school kiddos, and that's how we designed our program. Remember, specifically with middle schoolers in mind, that they crave structure and they are totally thriving on activity, right? So everything that we've done with the program has kept that in mind. We're starting with a bell ringer. I'll bet a lot of you middle school teachers have bell ringers already, with building vocabulary. And there's a vocabulary app that gets them ready for the text they're going to read, because every day we're going to get them into rich, wonderful, complex text. We're going to have them read it, analyze it, interpret it. But we also want them producing something within that, about that text. And so a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, we're going to have them writing to that text. But we're also going to have them do things like a Socratic seminar and role playing. They're going to do a wide variety of performance tasks with that. The lessons are designed around focus standards, and every day at the last portion of the lesson, we are going to have an exit ticket where you get a pulse check of how are my students doing in relation to that focus standard. And so that exit ticket is auto scored for you, and you get immediate scoring once students submit that. All of that happens in about 50 minutes for that lesson. After that lesson, though, we have something that we call solos. You might call them homework assignments, but they are going to bridge that text or for the next day's lesson. And so what does a lesson look like? Well, we labeled all of our lessons. We've given them a title. So here is one of the lessons from Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Art, and it's Read Like a Movie Director. It's lesson 1, where they're going to go into the first 10 paragraphs of the story, and their teachers are going to have a clear path of instruction based on the teacher's guide, as well as that online digital path with whichever route you choose. So you're going to see a clear lesson plan throughout. In each of those days, we're going to start with that vocabulary app, and our students are going to get automatic feedback, or I'm sorry, immediate feedback. They're going to be working through a wide variety of activities, lots of engaging, unique kinds of platforms for them to see. Then we're going to get them into text, and every day that text looks the same with that text on the left, or the platform looks the same with the text on the left and the activities and the questions on the right, just like they'd see on a state assessment. But we're going to then get them thinking about that text. And so the first thing we're going to do in this lesson is visualize. Remember, this is Read Like a Movie Director. We're going to get them visualizing what's happening and interpreting and making some interpretations about that.
Too nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am.
They can hear it from the teacher, or they can hear it from the platform. All of our stories are read aloud within the student platform. They're going to then use that writing journal. They're going to sketch what they've learned from the visualization of those paragraphs. They're going to share that. They're going to collaborate. We're going to share an artist's rendition of the visualization of those paragraphs, so that they can compare with an artist as well as their colleagues and their peers in the classroom. But we also want to make sure they can use the platform to take notes, to annotate, as well as copy and paste. When we're having them write and provide text evidence, they can do that, and they can save all of that right within that storyline that will carry over to the next day. They can do it in a consumable piece too. If you've got kiddos using the physical piece, they're going to annotate, they're going to highlight right within that physical piece as well. You want to have them converse about that. So with that performance task, once they've done the reading, we want to talk about that. We want to get them conversing with their peers. We try to provide some focus for that, because we know how easily it is for a middle school classroom to kind of get derailed. We're going to provide sentence starters with our lessons to make sure kids have a guide and a focus for their sharing. We're also, with that exit ticket, going to provide them with an example of something that they would be doing on an assessment, right? On a state assessment. So they're going to get practice in that regularly with the technology. The mobile solos are optimized for use on a smartphone. So kids can't say, I don't have anything to do my homework with. I don't have a device at home. So those solos are going to be auto scored just like those exit tickets, and you're going to get immediate feedback from what your students have done. The next day in subsequent lessons, we're going to put kids in what we call the Telltale Art App. It's a storyboard where kids are going to then continue with that visualization. They're going to have thought bubbles, the backgrounds, characters. They're looking at the narrator's perspective as well as the reader's perspective, because you know that literary concept of the unreliable narrator is so important in that story. And so they're going to be able to compare those perspectives, and we're going to talk about that. Remember though, every lesson in Amplify ELA really focuses on that low floors and high ceilings approach. We've developed those lessons to be able to meet the needs of all kiddos. And so how do we do that? When we write with kiddos, and here's an example, when we jump to lesson 3, we're writing and we're agreeing or disagreeing with that narrator, we're taking a stance. And when we do that, we provide a wide variety of options for teachers to choose from. So here is the prompt. Do you agree or disagree with the narrator's description of what is happening? This is for my core students. If I want to change that and provide substantial support for my students, notice how the prompt changes. I'm getting into a more literal understanding. I'm getting kids, I'm directing them into the text where I want them to provide some description. So I'm going to get them describing it and what they think is happening before I get them answering that prompt. And so now we're going back to that prompt, but I've also now provided them also with sentence starters. So those kids that may struggle are going to have a step up to be able to answer that question. I also have high flyers in my classroom, and I want to challenge them as well. So with a challenge prompt, I'm going to ask them for a counterclaim to that perspective. How do I do it? With a touch of a button, that differentiation button in my platform. When I hit that button, I see all of my kiddos. I can move them around. These are the levels of support, and I can determine based on any day of the week what prompt I want them to have, what assignment I want them to have. I'm going to get scored writing too, which is really neat. So when my students write that response to the narrator, I'm going to get that back, and I'm going to get it scored for conventions, focus, and use of evidence automatically. However, I can change that score, and I also want to be able to provide feedback. So there are built-in tools to make giving feedback kiddos easier, where you're highlighting their sentences and providing text or responses right at the point of use for them. I'm going to get a report with all of that. Notice focus, conventions, and use of evidence. It's going to tell me how they're performing based on all of those writing pieces. And then I'm going to have a flex day to be able to determine what their needs are. So when I generate a report, there's flexibility for a day of instruction based on what they've been doing in the prior days of instruction. So I'm going to have an embedded assessment measure that tells me who needs focus on language, reading, or writing. And then I'm going to have a flex day that allows me to choose a variety of activities based on language, writing, and reading. And I'm going to select which students get what assignment. So there's a lot of flexibility there. The reading assessment also provides you with the tool that allows students to practice what they're going to do on a state assessment in that real-time tool. Now, the last couple of things I want to hit upon are our Amplify library. I mentioned to you, we have a over 700 full text library. Your kiddos can search it by genre. They can search it by lexile. Lots of great opportunities for literature circles and all of the text from the program. And then we also have a number of interactive apps that are going to focus on project-based learning and the quests that are associated with so many of our units. Lots of really fun things, amazing resources for our kiddos. We have touched on so much today, from CKLA and ELA, our core curriculum for grades K to 8, our assessment tool with MClass, and our supplemental tool that meets the needs of kiddos where they are in K to 5. And we are also providing a free 6-month pilot for that K to 5 Amplify reading that Megan so wonderfully shared with you earlier. So we'd love to hear more from you. If you want more information, we know we've given you a lot. Are there any questions? And I don't know if our colleague Steve has been able to answer those or if we've shared those. I know we're right up against time, and I really appreciate you sticking with us.
Yeah, Karen, it doesn't look like we've had any questions come in the chat, but we knew that we would be sharing a lot of information. It's a lot to absorb. And so as Karen shared, if you do want to learn more about any of our programs, you can actually access this. Here's where you can go to get in touch with us. You can access this website, email us, and we'd be happy to take a much deeper dive into our phenomenal literacy programs that are all grounded in the latest research on literacy. And so we thank you for joining us and look forward to hearing from you.
Yes.
Have a good afternoon, guys.
Great rest of your week.
Yes, absolutely.